So we're going to go ahead and get started and welcome everybody. If you have the capability of turning on a camera, we would love to see you. It's okay if you don't, but we are super excited to welcome so many people from across the state of North Carolina today. And in this new initiative from the North Carolina Council on the Holocaust. So my name is Laurie Schaefer, and I am the chairperson-elect of the North Carolina Council on the Holocaust. And I love running a lot of our workshops and webinars. So I'm really, really glad to see all of you today. We are going to introduce a couple of other people first, and I'm going to ask my co-council member who's helping me run this, Mr. Lee Holder, to introduce himself very quickly and tell where you're from. I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So Lee, where are you from? There you go. Lee, you're muted.
What a great way to start. My name is Lee Holder. I'm from Kinston. I'm at the Gisela Gross Abramson Holocaust and Civil Rights Resource Center here in Kinston, member of the council, and I want to welcome everyone to this morning's webinar. Thank you for being here.
Okay, so we are going to get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we have a couple of things we want to share with you before we hear from Margot. All right. And here, this is Margot here. I have known Margot for many years, and I'm very, very excited to have all of you hear her story, right? We wanted to first kind of give you an idea of how many people we have and where everybody is. Lee, I'm going to let you explain what's going on with this map.
Yeah, we wanted to plot. We knew that the interest in this webinar would be great. So we decided to plot the counties that were represented this morning. Everything in that bluish purple represents people that are online with us this morning. There are 45 counties here, and there were at least 10 to 15 others that wanted to join us, but because of scheduling at their schools, they weren't able to. So they will be watching the recordings. I believe they're over, and Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, around 3,000 people that will be viewing this today, and thousands of more in the future.
Yeah, so thank you for being part of this historic moment with us. So we're going to also just kind of, we're going to be welcoming soon. Hopefully he'll be joining. And if you already hear me or joins, please unmute and stop me. But we're going to be talking with the mayor of Winston-Salem, who has a special thing to declare. We're going to come back to that when he is able to join, right? So we also want to introduce one other guest that we have who's going to say a few words, and that is the chair of our Holocaust Council. He is actually the son of Gisela Abramson, about whom the Gisela Abramson Holocaust Education Act is named after. So we actually have a mandate here in North Carolina to teach about the Holocaust in middle and high school English and social studies. So this is a little bit, let me go back here to my presentation. This is the act itself. Then we're going to also take a look at Gisela's, this is Gisela, who actually was one of the co-founders of the North Carolina Council on the Holocaust in the 1980s. We happen to have her son with us today, and he wants to wish Margot a little happy birthday, and we're going to let him kind of talk here for a minute. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can actually see him and come back over here. Mike, would you mind saying a couple words?
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Schaefer. And hello, Mr. Holder. So my name is Mike Abramson. I'm chairman of the North Carolina Council on the Holocaust. And teacher's notes for you, if you need a speaker, perhaps a Holocaust speaker or a child or grandchild of a Holocaust survivor come to your school, please contact me. Please contact me for a classroom set of books as well for your school on the Holocaust. I just want to welcome all of you today. Students, you're going to hear from a Holocaust survivor. This is a person who survived World War II as a civilian, not as a soldier. She had no ammunition, no guns, nothing to defend herself, but she was strong-willed and tried her best to survive. And you'll hear her story very soon. So this is a remarkable experience for you. Perhaps one day you can hear other people talk about the Holocaust. They could be children of Holocaust survivors or grandchildren of survivors. But the learning experience I want you to get, students, is simply this. Try to be a good person. Try to get along with others around you. If you have feelings of hate, or if you're not feeling well about yourself, or you really want to do harm to someone else or some building, please talk to your teacher. Reach out to individuals around you. Try to be a good citizen. These are the lessons of the Holocaust. Trying to be a good person as you grow into a good adult, following the laws and trying to make life work for you. I realize you have many challenges in the world. Talk to your teachers, find an adult who you trust who can help you. And that's really all we're trying to do today, is make you be good citizens and good people around the state and around the country. So thank you so much for listening. Again, happy birthday, Margot. She's 99 years old. You are a blessing, Margot, to this state and to this community. I see Ms. Williams holding up a happy birthday sign down there. Thank you so much. And be well. And Ms. Schaefer, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to come back and do just a little bit more before we hear from Margot. And here we go. So I want to just give you a little bit of background as far as just some basic facts about the Kindertransport, which you may have already learned about, but Margot's going to tell you a lot more about that today. So there were 10,000 children under the age of 17 in the Kindertransport. Kinder meaning child and transport, you can guess where that is, where they're transporting children, came from Nazi Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia. And England was one of the few countries who stepped up and did this. And Margot is one of these 10,000 children. 41% of children in the Kindertransport never saw their parents again because they perished in the Holocaust. And so you'll find that had quite the impact. 25% of Jews killed in the Holocaust were children. And so that number could have been higher without countries like England rescuing 10,000 children. By 1945, 2 out of every 3 European Jews had been killed. And so the impact of the Holocaust is felt even today. Unfortunately, though, only half the people in the world, 50%, have heard about the Holocaust. I am hoping that you students have heard at least about the Holocaust, even if you don't know a lot about it. You're going to learn more today. And I know some of you have teachers who are teaching you about it right now. So you come with a little bit of knowledge already, and we're excited about that. But hearing from a survivor is a very, very special privilege that we will not have for very much longer. But we have extraordinary people like Margot, who is going to talk to us about her story, even as she just turned 99 years old yesterday. That's how important this is for her, to be able to actually show us and tell us what it was all about. So for just a minute, one more time, I'm gonna come off of sharing my screen because I want you to see Margot. And we're gonna go ahead and introduce you to her. And then I'm gonna show some slides too while she's speaking, okay? So Margot, can you unmute now? I see you've got the camera working. There you go. All right, Margot, I'm going to turn this over to you if you want to say hi to everybody and go ahead and start telling your story.
Well, thank you very, very much, Lori, and everyone who has been so kind of introducing. I really do appreciate being able to do that. And here I go. My name is Margot Lobree, and I am a Holocaust survivor. My story of escape is based on the Kindertransport. When we speak of the Holocaust, usually the first thing that comes to mind are the concentration camps, starvation, different forms of cruelties, and death. My way of surviving was different. I was never in a camp. I never had my head shaved. I do not have a number tattooed on my arm. I always had a roof over my head, some food to eat, and a bed to sleep in. Even though Holocaust related, my experience was different. After November the 9th of 1938, Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, England immediately began to rescue 10,000 children from Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic, and Poland. I was one of those children. The ages ranged from 3 months to 17 years. We traveled by train from different areas via Holland to England. We eventually became known as the train children. Now I want you to take a moment and imagine a child coming home one day being told that you are going to have to leave your family, all your friends, and all your belongings, and alone you are going to a foreign country with a foreign language and live with strangers. That is what happened to me. I was 13 years old. I knew that our lives had become very difficult. It went from being very comfortable to being a struggle to exist. We experienced poverty and lived in constant fear. As children, we had friends one day who could not live or speak with us the next day, strictly because we were Jewish. Had they played or spoken to us, they would have even endangered their families. We had to leave the schools we attended only because we were Jewish. We had to attend schools which had only Jewish students. I have to admit that as a child, I did not understand the severity of the situation until later in my life. My father had died early that year, and my mother tried to protect her 2 children as much as she possibly could. The day after Kristallnacht, elderly parents were chased out of the village they had lived all their lives, came to live with us, and we lived in a very small apartment, which at that point became overcrowded. And for that reason, my mother had to make some very quick decisions. My brother was old enough to immigrate to Israel, then Palestine, where he remained for the rest of his life. And since I was not old enough, my experience was England. Application was made, I was accepted, and in April of 1939, my mother took me to the train station, where together with other children, we began the journey to our new lives and new homes. Eventually, after train and ferry ride, the next day we arrived at Liverpool Station in London, where we were either met by sponsors or members of Bloomsbury House, the committee responsible to find shelter for those children who did not have sponsors. They were placed either on farms, orphanages, or hostels. I was picked up by a family who sponsored me, which was lucky. It saved my life, but it was not a good experience. I was reminded repeatedly that I was a refugee and needed to be grateful where I was. I ate with a maid in the kitchen and did housework before and after school. I was cheap labor, still only 13 years old. Today, I would say I was exploited. Within a few months after my arrival in London, September 3rd of 1939, war was declared in Europe, and the bombing started immediately. The family I lived with evacuated, leaving me and the maid behind in London to face the bombing. Eventually, they informed the committee that they could not afford to keep me any longer, and I was sent to a hostel about 45 miles outside of London, which in this case was kind of school/orphanage for refugee girls. The ages ranged from 4 to 16. I lived there for 2 years. Rusthall Beacon, as it was called, was not a bad place. Some of the staff were nice, others were not so nice, but we children had each other, the older ones looking after the younger ones, and life went on. At the age of 15, I was sent to a shop to clean and learn dressmaking. After 2 years at the Beacon, a girl I had become very good friends with, we decided that we were old enough to venture out on our own. We requested and received permission to move back to London. Julie had an aunt and uncle there, and I'm sure that helped. First, we moved into another hostel, found jobs, and managed to support ourselves. But after a couple of months of living there, we decided to move on. First, we rented a room, stayed there for a short time, and then rented a small apartment where we lived until I left England for the United States in April of 1944. Now, in April of 1944, there was still a war raging in Europe, and traveling across the Atlantic was dangerous. We traveled in a convoy.
Marco, you accidentally muted yourself. Can you unmute again? Sorry.
Thing right there.
There you go. We're good. Keep going.
There were rescue sailors or soldiers or sailors in case there were attacks. It took 2 weeks to travel from Liverpool to Boston. In mid-Atlantic, we encountered a horrendous storm. That was my first experience of cruising. Life in England during the war was not easy. We barely made ends meet, but we never worried that others might have more than we did. We went to dances, met boys, mostly soldiers. We were teenagers and managed to find ways to enjoy ourselves. We wore the same clothes most of the time because we couldn't new ones. But then, with the war going on, we knew who had any more. Besides, everything was rationed. We carried gas masks, went into shelters when we heard the sirens, and came out when they sounded the all clear. Now, later, as I thought about my experience in England, being that I was there because of the war, Holocaust, I realized how much I had been deprived of. I lost loving attention of family. I was deprived of a good education and growing up under normal circumstances. I was deprived of learning who I am and how to be an adult in a safe environment. I had to figure out what was right or wrong, because if I did wrong, there was no. For the 5 years I was in England, I was totally responsible for myself. I was deprived of a normal childhood. Once I was married, I saw my friends with their parents enjoying an adult friendship as a child-parent relationship. I realized I was also denied that. I only understood the trauma and the tragedy of my entire experience as an adult. After reading the book called Exodus by Leon Uris, the part where Karen's father is saying goodbye to her at the train station as she's leaving for Denmark, at that time I had a child, and I asked myself, if I had to, could I or would I give up my child? And at that moment, I could understand what my mother must have gone through, sending both of her children away within 6 weeks of each other to make sure that they would be safe and their lives would be spared, knowing that she might never see either one of them again. Her love for us and her strength is indescribable. now realize what she too was denied, not seeing her children as grown-up, responsible adults, as well as being a grandmother. And my children would never experience that special love of a grandmother. Understanding it made me very angry. We could communicate with my mother for a while, but that ended in 1941. When the opportunity arose for me to go back to Frankfurt, the city where I was born, I said, never. I was not wanted there before. Why would I want to go back there now? Well, never is a long time. And as I aged and mellowed, I began to see things differently. In 1996, I was invited as a former to visit Frankfurt. I would only go if my brother from Israel could join me. By now, I wanted my husband to see where I was born, and we invited our oldest son to join us for a while so that he could see where his mother came from. I was pleasantly surprised. From the moment we stepped off the plane, we realized that we were dealing with a different generation, a generation that was not denying what their parents had allowed to happen, but a generation that was remorseful and wanted us to know that it would never be allowed to happen again. I'm not saying no anti-Semitism then. Yes, there was, and there's even more now. And what is happening in this country with the mass shootings, hate crimes, racism all around us, we also have it here, to a point where I'm asking myself, will I have to watch what I'm saying for fear of being arrested because I'm Jewish? Will my children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren, like I did, see our synagogues burn? Will occupational opportunities be denied to them because of their religion, color of their skin, or their sexual orientations? Anyway, my brother and I walked our childhood. We visited every apartment we had lived in, every school we attended. We spoke in several high schools. We were always treated with the greatest respect. The trip taught me something. Holding on to anger is of energy. It is not productive, it is destructive. Anger at anything or anyone, when it's over, let it go. I'm glad I did, and I went forward with my life. I know that is also what my mother would have wanted me to do. Eventually, with the love and encouragement of my late husband, I caught up with my high school and college education. My chosen profession as a travel counselor has given me the opportunity to see most of the world. I enjoyed 55 and a half years of a happy marriage. I'm the proud mother of 2 great sons, have daughter-in-laws, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Having now given you my experience, how I survived the Holocaust, allow me to go back and give you the background of what happened to set my story and many in motion. In the fall of 1938, laws were passed in Germany restricting Jewish economic activities and professional opportunities. And as of January 1939, all Jews had to carry identification cards. On October the 28th of 1938, 17,000 Jews of Polish citizenship, many who had been living in Germany for decades, were arrested and relocated across the Polish border. The Polish government refused to admit them and placed them into relocation camps. Among them was a family who had been living in the city of Hanover since 1911. On October the 27th, their belongings were confiscated and they were forced to move back to Poland. Their 17-year-old son, who at that time was living with his uncle in Paris, when he heard of the family's expulsions, became so angry, he decided on November the 7th to go to the German embassy to kill the German ambassador. Upon discovering that the ambassador was not in, he shot and severely wounded Secretary Ernst von Rath, who died of his wounds 2 days later. November the 9th, 1938. The revenge of that murder launched a pogrom against the German Jews, and since it was interpreted as an act against Hitler himself, the rampaging also carried through the newly acquired territories such as Austria and the Czech Republic. The night of November the 9th became known as Crystal Night, Kristallnacht, or the Night of the Broken Glass. The next day, we saw our synagogues burn, Nazis coming to the home, looking for men to arrest them for no other reason than the fact that they were Jewish. After that night, England stepped in, starting the Kindertransport. Not to be misleading, the Kindertransport was not the only way for Jews to escape out of Europe. There were stories of righteous Christians who put their lives on the lines for hiding or transporting Jews. There was Shanghai, China, where there was no quota, and about 20,000 Jews emigrated to Shanghai. There were affidavit sponsors. They required visas. And although many Jews got out that way, the lines at the consulates were long, and many never made it to the front of the lines. Italy, in spite of Mussolini, protected its Jews for a long time, as did Greece. The Japanese ambassador in Lithuania issued visas disobeying his country. Schindler hired Jews in his factory, and Leica cameras from 1933 till 1939 established the Leica Freedom Train, allowing Jews to leave Germany under the guise of being employees of the country who were being transferred overseas. Land was donated in Argentina outside of Buenos Aires for Jews to come if they agreed to farm the land. And of course, Sir Nicholas Winton, the English gentleman who alone rescued 669 children from the Czech Republic, which became known as the Czech Kindertransport. And in conclusion, going back to my story, my brother and I never saw our mother again. We found out in recent years that she was deported to Itzbika, a ghetto in Poland, on May the 24th, 1942. Itzbika railway station, and deportees not continuing on to Auschwitz were taken off the train, most of them shot and buried in mass graves. As to my late brother, we parted as children and met again 25 years later, when both of us were parents. We had since 1963 been fortunate enough to see each other frequently and treasured the times we spent together. In June of 2019, my children and 3 of my brother's grandchildren went back to Frankfurt for a stone-setting ceremony. Germany is setting stones for victims of the Holocaust. These stones are set in the sidewalk of the last registered address where the victim lived. The stones are brass color and are engraved with their names, date of birth, where they died or immigrated to. In my case, they sent 3 stones, 1 for my mother, 1 for my brother, and 1 for me. We continued the trip on to Berlin, visiting all the Holocaust memorials, museums, and a concentration camp outside of Berlin. The trip, although emotional and exhausting, gave me a sense of closure. At least Germany recognized that my mother was killed by Nazis. But with it all, let me end by saying, life has been good. I'm here to tell the story, a story that is already history. But what I see today, what is going on in Israel, the Ukraine, and other parts of the world brings back many memories. Seeing live families saying goodbye to each other, possibly never to meet again. Parents sending children away by themselves to make sure that they are safe. Having sirens and explosions, hearing them, and seeing the terrible destruction of lives and homes. The rise of anti-Semitism and hate proves that terrorists and vicious leaders can do to innocent people. War anywhere is tragic. It is the people who did the least who suffer the most. It is started by power-hungry leaders and terrorist organizations who have no respect for life, but only want to gratify their egos. We must be aware of such leaders and protect our freedom. During the rise of Hitler, Germany failed from keeping its democracy strong. We are faced with some of these same issues today. We are threatened by vocal and violent minority, spreading fear and hate. Let us be vigilant, learn from history, make sure not to allow history to repeat itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margot. I'm always I'm always touched by your story and how eloquently you tell it. Before we have questions, and teachers, if you have questions from your students, please feel free to put them in the chat. Leah and I can see them and we can ask Margot. But we do have a special guest. Mayor Alan Joines is on this call, Mayor of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And Mayor, I'm going to invite you to perhaps unmute and say a few words. Mr. Joines, are you there? Okay, maybe he has some technical issues too. So we'll come back to him, see if he's going to be there. So I would say one of the things that I want to do before we ask Margot some questions is show you a few more pictures of her story, including her family. So I'm going to come back to.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can. Okay, Mayor, take it away.
Sorry about that. A little technical difficulties, but it's truly my honor to be with you all this morning, and enjoyed hearing the story that Margot told everyone. I'm so pleased to see the classes that are there today, learning from her and to discuss the Holocaust and the terrible time that was in our world. I have issued a proclamation today, or actually yesterday. If it's okay, I'll read that quickly.
Yes, please.
Ms. Lobree. Whereas Margot Lobree is a Holocaust survivor through the Kindertransport program in 1938-39, whose courageous mother saved her life by sending her to a foster family in London, England, while she unfortunately perished during the Holocaust. Margot survived the bombing of London, learned the new language and culture, became independent as a young teenager, and immigrated to the United States in 1944. And whereas Margot became an American citizen, married the love of her life, soldier she wrote to, had 2 sons and multiple grandchildren and great-grandchildren, moving to Winston-Salem to be near her family. And whereas Margot Lobree, while living in Winston-Salem, willingly did answer the call of teachers, organizations, and others who requested that she share her story of survival during the Holocaust with countless audiences reflecting on the lessons learned before, during, and after the Holocaust. And whereas the community of Winston-Salem has benefited greatly from Margot's generosity and dedication to speaking to young people in schools and adults who heard about her story, giving hope that humanity can overcome anger and forgive even the most heinous of crimes. And whereas Margot Lobree does, to the best of her ability, even after turning 99 on September 25th, 2024, continues to tell her story as long and as often as she can, bringing the message that holding on to anger and grudges is a waste of energy. It's not productive. It is destructive. Anger at anyone, no matter who it is, when it's over, let it go. Now, therefore, I am Mayor of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim Margot's 90th birthday, September 25th, 2024, as Margot Lobree Day here in Winston-Salem. Urge all of our citizens to take notice that this woman, the contributions she's made, not only in our city, but United States. On behalf of the city of Winston-Salem, our 254,000 citizens, I wish you a very happy birthday and sincere thank you for what you have done for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We really appreciate you joining us. And we will be giving this official proclamation to Margot tomorrow night at her birthday party. So thank you very, very much. Okay, so let's just learn one more time with our presentation, just to give you an idea and be thinking of those questions. Let me kind of come back here. This is Margot's journey here in the United States, and how she came to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, landed in Boston, moved to New York, and then San Francisco, and then here in North Carolina. We do have some primary source documents about Margot's mother. I'm going to put this up on the screen. And this in particular tells us this is the ghetto to which her mother was sent and the train station that was there. And we do have the date that she was also sent there as well. This is Margot with the letters that her mother wrote her that she still has. This is information about her grandparents, her grandmother and her grandfather that were living with them in Frankfurt. Her grandmother was sent to Theresienstadt and then on to Treblinka, and then her grandfather died before he was deported. All right, so and we've already seen these stones that were set. This is also Margot, who has a memorial garden named after her, along with other survivors you see in this picture here at Mount Tabor High School in Winston-Salem. And this is the garden that honors her and her mother, right? And it is this quote from Margot that I think really is so important for us to realize that what anger can do to us and how it is important to let it go, right? Okay, so with that, we do already have some questions, Margot. So our first question is, can you tell us anything about what life was like growing up in Germany before Kristallnacht? Was it challenging once Hitler came to power? What do you remember?
Well, since 1933, when Hitler came to power, there are certain fears we lived with. I mean, you were afraid to say something for fear you were being overheard. You looked over your shoulder to see who was following you. It was a life of fear. For young children, it was very difficult.
What do you remember about Kristallnacht, about that very pivotal moment in history? What was Kristallnacht like for you and your mother and your grandparents?
I remember going to school the next morning and seeing the synagogues burn. I knew of the rampaging that went in during the night, but actually from the apartment which I lived in, we did not feel anything at that point, not until the next day. Did we really realize it when Hitler came to the house looking for my father, who had already died 9-10 months before. And my mother had to tell them. And there was a store downstairs, and they went in that store and asked if that Jew was really dead. So they didn't even believe my mother.
Do you remember anything about the train ride to England?
I have very little memory of the train ride. I don't remember any of the children, or if there was crying going on or carrying on. I do remember Nazis coming through the cars, the train cars, and going through luggage to make sure that nothing was taken out. That was not to be taken out. It was confiscated. So it was, I mean, I don't remember the act. I do remember going on the ferry across from the Hook from Holland to Harwich, and it was an overnight ride. But from the train ride, it was a train ride.
So the foster family that picked you up in England, did they speak German, and were they Jewish?
They were Jewish,
Mhm.
no German. There was a lot of hand motion,
Mhm.
trying to communicate, but amazing that within a short period of time, I spoke English. I don't even remember the transition, but all of a sudden it was there.
Do you still speak German today?
I'm sorry?
Do you still speak any German?
Yes. I speak enough to communicate, to make myself understood. But the language has changed. Like any other language, it's become very technical. It's, so in that end, I'm totally lost.
At what point did you and other children on the Kindertransport perhaps learn about the concentration camps in Germany? Did you hear about them during the war, or was it after the war that you found out about everything that happened?
Well, the severity of it, I don't think we found out until after the war. I mean, there was no communication. There was certainly Germany did not publicize what it was doing. And until after the war, when our armies started moving into concentration camps, when Eisenhower said to his soldiers, take as many pictures as you can, because someday somebody is going to deny this. So until after that, we really never knew how tragic, how unbelievable, how impossibly to comprehend it was.
Did you stay in contact with your friend Julie that you lived with in England?
Julie and I remained friends for the rest of her life. She passed away about 3 years. Regina, 3 or 4 years ago, we went to her memorial service in New York. And Julie and I were closer than sisters. And even though she lived in New York, I lived in California. We were communicating constantly. Our husband became good friends. We spent vacations together, traveled back and forth to New York, and she came to California. So it was just a love and affection that lasted a lifetime.
That's wonderful. I have some questions in the chat about, were you able to practice Judaism while you were living in England as a child? And are you still practicing today?
I really did not practice Judaism, although I always remembered and tried to. When I was on my own, I remember on Yom Kippur going to a synagogue, but I did not. Now I'm I'm maybe not as practicing as Jew, but a very devout Jew. As I always say, I was born a Jew, I will die a Jew. It is part of my DNA. It is part of I can't imagine doing or being anything else.
Do you know when you began telling your story and speaking about what happened to you? At what point in your life? Yeah. Did you begin telling your story?
I have written, I've written a book of letters. I have written the story. I have tapes. My grandchildren and great-grands are very aware of what happened in my life.
Wonderful.
Although I try not to be negative about it, to be as positive as possible, because I don't want, certainly not the little ones, to grow up with fear, especially what we hear today of what is going on with anti-Semitism, to fear that this could happen again.
Have you experienced any anti-Semitism here in the United States? Living here in the US, have you experienced any anti-Semitism?
Personally, I have not. I mean, I live a life personally, but I have not. But I know it's there. I know it's there in force. but I do know of hatred and the anger that is being spread. And there's always got to be a scapegoat. And I think like in 1932 and 1933, it became the Jews. I think the same thing is happening now.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you reconnected with your brother?
Yeah, we went to Israel in 1963 the first time, and he met us at that point it was called Ben Gurion Airport. No, at some point it was called Lot Airport, and it was very emotional. 25 years.
Right.
It was, we were parents. We realized what we had lost.
Next question is, what advice do you have for all the young people listening to you today about dealing with the political and social divisions in our society, how hate seems to be spewed from everywhere? What advice do you have for them in dealing with that?
Well, first of all, don't believe the hatred that you're being fed. It is usually, and I would say 99.99% not true. Be vigilant of your surroundings and don't be afraid to respond if you hear something that you feel is hateful, that is anti-Semitic, that is racism. Don't be afraid. Report it, or tell a teacher, tell a principal, tell somebody, this is improper, this is wrong. And make sure that you alert your, people so that it doesn't spread. Try to prevent it from spreading. Bullying is a terrible thing. Don't feel that anyone is superior to you. You're as good as anyone. You're as good as you think of yourself. And don't allow bullying.
So, Margot, we're going to end with my favorite question. How did you meet your husband?
Well, my late husband and I were pen pals for 8.5 years. I had an uncle in San Francisco while I was still in England, and he came to visit David's mother, and he said, I have this little niece in England that I have to write to. And her son, who was 6 years older, said, give me her name and address and I'll write to her. And that started a pen palship of 8.5 years. When I came to New York in 1944, he was a sailor. He was in the Navy. And at that point, it was patriotic to write to a sailor. So he'd keep writing. In 1948, my uncles invited me. I was living in New York at the time, to come and visit in San Francisco. David's mother invited me to stay with them. And guess who picked me up at the airport? This very handsome young man driving across from Oakland to school on this glorious, beautiful, clear day. And I came from bombed out London, stood in New York to this gorgeous white skyline of San Francisco. And I always say, I don't know if I fell in love with the skyline or the guy driving the car. But 48 hours he proposed. I said yes, never looked back. Went back to New York for 7 weeks, tied up my whatever, and came back on a Saturday afternoon. Sunday morning at 4:30, we got in the car and drove to Reno and got married. Called the rabbi, he got the witnesses, and by 3:00 in the afternoon, we were married.
How much did your marriage cost?
Don't underestimate the power of the pen. Our wedding cost $35. It's not the cost of the wedding that makes the marriage.
Very good advice. We want to just kind of end with a couple of special things. And so the first thing that we're going to do, because we also want to celebrate your 99th birthday, Margot, I'm going to ask Ms. Howell's class if they would unmute, because they're going to honor us by singing you happy birthday. And then everybody else, we're going to unmute and say happy birthday when this is over. All right, you can hold up signs and things for Margot to see if you've got them. Okay, Ms. Howell, are you ready?
Yeah, can you guys hear us?
Yep, sure can.
All right, okay, all right, y'all stand up. Let's do it. Okay, all right. On the count of 3, we are gonna sing you a happy birthday song, Margot. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Margot. Happy birthday to you.
And thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You're great.
All right, so one more thing, Margot. Everybody unmute. Okay, let's give everybody time and see all those things, because all together, the whole state of North Carolina is going to wish you a happy birthday. It might be a little chaotic and loud, but we can do this. Stay quiet until we do it, guys.
Sing happy birthday.
Okay, all right. Now, on the count of 3, all going to say happy birthday, Margot. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
Happy birthday,
You can do it again.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, so
Darling.
everybody could please do it again. Good try.
I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Lori. I want to thank the mayor for joining in. I am so honored, and never in all my life, first of all, did I expect to reach this high point, but to get this recognition and this honor was far beyond anything that I could ever imagine. I really, really when humbled, and want to thank each and every one of you for your participation and involvement in this. I have no other words that I can think of that express my humility and my appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. And thank you, everybody from across the state for joining us. If you missed any part of this, we'll send the recording to you later. We wish you a happy and hopefully a safe day today and tomorrow with the hurricane coming in. So we're glad we were able to meet with all of you. We're going to wrap it up now. And
Lori, just
leave.
Everyone that made a poster, would you please take a photograph of it for us and send it to Lori or myself so we can put those all in a birthday book for Margot? Thank you so much for that.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. All right, everybody, have a good day.